From 1645 to 47, Britain experienced an intense period of investigations, known as the witch hunts, where hundreds of women, and a few men, were investigated. Those found guilty were executed, usually by hanging.
This is terribly uncomfortable.
Witchcraft was not a new idea or a new crime. Beliefs about witches went back centuries. People had always believed in evil spirits, demons, and the devil. This was part of Christian belief. If there was a God and a heaven, there was also a devil and a hell, a battle between the forces of good and the forces of evil. In the medieval periods, witchcraft had been a minor crime that was dealt with by church courts. During the early modern periods, new laws against witchcraft were passed. These laws made witchcraft a serious crime because many people were afraid of it, including monarchs. Change started under the reign of the Tudors as a result of the English Reformation and the replacement of the Pope as the head of the Church in England. The Catholic Church lost much of its influence. Henry began a period of religious uncertainty, known as the Tudor religious rollercoaster, where the kingdom went from Catholicism to Protestantism, to Catholicism, back to Protestantism. Through religious uncertainty rose a fear, a paranoia that evil was at work in England. Before the Reformation, people went to their local Catholic church for spiritual help, places where priests would offer blessings to protect them from evil and to perform exorcisms, to remove evil spirits from the bodies of unfortunate victims that had been possessed. With the abandonment of many Catholic practices, people felt more vulnerable to demonic possession and the work of the devil. In the Witchcraft Act, 1542, Henry VIII made the practice of witchcraft illegal. And, in an attempt to combat religious fears, he made it a capital crime, a crime punishable by death. The Act also prevented anyone accused of witchcraft from using benefit of the clergy, a legal device that spared criminals from capital punishment if they were able to recite a passage from the Bible. In 1563, his daughter Queen Elizabeth I introduced the Act against conjuration, enchantments, and witchcraft, which made trying to raise the dead, making zombies, a criminal offence. The Act also demanded that any practice of witchcraft that caused harm to others should be punishable by death. Elizabeth also changed the law, so charges of witchcraft had to be tried in common courts instead of the far more lenient church courts they had previously been tried in. The monarch who played the most significant role in the rise of the witch hunts was James I. King of Scotland from 1567, he united the Scottish and English kingdoms when he became King of England in 1603. King James genuinely believed in witchcraft and that he was the target of dark magic and assassination attempts from witches. On one occasion when he was travelling by sea to Denmark, fierce storms forced his ship to turn back. The storm didn't sink the king's ship, however one ship was sunk containing gifts meant for his new bride, Anne of Denmark. James became convinced that this was the work of witches from North Berwich, intent on his death. James took the assassination attempt very personally and acted as the interrogator for several of the cases in the resulting witch trials. Started in 1590 in the town of North Berwich, Scotland, just east of Edinburgh. The trials ran for about 3 years, and around 170 to 200 people were arrested and put on trial. Under horrendous torture, accused women confessed to all manner of bizarre rituals, digging up corpses from local graveyards and doing unspeakable things to their dismembered bodies. The king anonymously wrote and published rituals and information uncovered during the trials in News from Scotland. The pamphlet contained the story of Agnes Thompson, a notorious witch who was accused of trying to assassinate the king on more than one occasion. During her confession, she recites how, along with her witch's coven, she performed a Black Sabbath, a magical ritual, during All Hallows Eve, sacrificed a cat and flung its body into the sea in an attempt to summon a storm to sink the king's ship as he sailed from Denmark. James's hatred and obsession of witchcraft became so well known that Shakespeare included witches into the Scottish play Macbeth. Written during the reign of King James, the very first scene opens during a storm where the witches discuss their supernatural powers to affect the weather, a reference to the storm witches supposedly conjured when they tried to assassinate the king. In 1597, James wrote a second book called Demonology, published in 1603, the year he came to the throne of England. This was a study on the methods demons used to spread evil including witchcraft and dark magic. It also touches on topics such as werewolves and vampires. Demonology is an extraordinary piece of literature. It showed that a king, the head of the government in England, believed that witches existed, and they were a dangerous threat that needed to be hunted down and executed. By attaching his name to demonology, James was making public his superstitious beliefs and using his royal influence to promote witch hunting across his new kingdom. Through demonology, he made public his concerns that the country was full of these detestable slaves of the devil. Demonology should be seen as a sort of instruction manual for witch hunting, because it laid out the ways people could identify witches in their community. Several measures were used to detect witches, such as a familiar, a creature created by the devil to do the witch's bidding. It supposedly granted the witch magical powers, and in return fed on her blood. People were accused simply for having red hair, for having unusual devil's marks, or what we would call a birthmark, or for being left-handed. Traditionally, older women and those who worked with herbs and medicines or midwives could be targeted. Finally, demonology put forward the idea of swimming a witch. The water in a river or lake was blessed, and the witch was tied up and thrown into the water. This test or trial would be used in future witch hunts, not just in Britain but also in the American colonies later that century. The beliefs of James I stayed around long after he died in 1625. This infamously led to the witch hunts of 1645 and the work of men such as Matthew Hopkins. Over the following 200 years, about 2,000 people were found guilty and executed for witchcraft.